started to implement as much women in my life, and since because I was unexperienced, I was always the nice guy, right? And I would find myself being best friends with a lot of girls in the past, I don't know, 2 years maybe, and all of them besides one ended up breaking my heart, and all of them ended up being more or less just bad friends overall, or crazy. I know this is a harsh word, but I just found myself that these girls do not make good friends, and they are actually, to some extent, crazy.
Well, let me like clarify a little bit, right? So the reality is, when it comes to relationships with women, most of the time, they will only do to you what you allow them to do, right? So it becomes a measure of your own standards. So if you give them too much and you allow them to act that way towards you, they're going to keep doing it. So you have to also you have to understand it's not necessarily their fault. Like, you have to take responsibility for giving them too much, and then that basically causes them to act however they want. And if you're not going to say no, then of course they're going to keep doing it because that's interesting to them, right? It's kind of the same as like a guy getting bullied by another guy, right? I mean, the guy will keep bullying and pushing until the guy steps up and says no more and holds his ground. And at that point, it becomes less interesting to bully someone, right? So you kind of, and I'm not saying that these girls necessarily bullied you, but I'm saying that this is natural human behavior, right? You have to basically decide actively ahead of time, no, I'm not going to do this, right?
Yeah, so I definitely heard similar advice from people before, and let me say, I never had a problem with leaving these toxic girls. I always ended up breaking off the friendship, but with this girl it was just so difficult because I became attached. And this girl, let me just say, she was a master at manipulation. I was just pretty much cornered and helpless because it would get to the point where she would, I don't know, she would, when I tried to pay attention in class, she would, I don't know, she would poke me, she would stop me from concentrating on the lesson just so I can concentrate with her. So when I was in the same area as her, in the same general vicinity, I would just end up almost being forced to look at her, to speak to her, to touch her. And
well, let me just like address this real quick, right? Like, you don't want to get into this mindset that you were forced, because the truth is you weren't actually forced. You just allowed it to happen, right? Like, no one forces you to pay attention to anybody. So if you allowed it, you have to kind of look at it as you were weak in that moment, right? And it doesn't mean you're like necessarily a weak guy. But you have to keep in mind, right? If this is an issue for you, then it's something you have to seriously think about. No one just comes up to you and starts manipulating you in one day. This is a slow process, right? That you allow to happen. And if you don't make your intentions extremely clear, then this will keep happening to you, right? And it's okay to say no, right? You're allowed to say no to somebody. You're allowed to say no to her. Like, even though she's calling you, you're still thinking so hard about her calling you, right? So it's obviously you have like a problem with boundaries. And this is basically the secret, that if you master this part, you'll solve all of your problems. You have to create healthy boundaries for yourself and for other people in your life, right? Whether it's a girl or a guy, right?
Yeah, I have tried to. Sorry for interrupting. I'm just trying not to forget what to say. But
Yeah,
I did try to set up some boundaries, but she just wasn't having it.
Well, it's too late, man. It's too late, man. Like, now it's too late for you to set boundaries now, because once you allow someone to step on you once, you can't all of a sudden decide, oh, after 10 times, now I'm going to set the boundary. People are going to be very resistant to that. Now, you have to do it anyways. And like, no one can let you, right? You basically at some point have to say, look, it's going to be this way or it's going to be no way. Right? You have to have the strength to say that to her. So right now, let's say she's calling you. I mean, I personally obviously would not want you to cave to it. I think you should completely remove her from your life. But if for whatever reason you do cave, which, like I said, really don't want you to do this. But at some point you have to be able to say, look, this is going to be this way or nothing. And if you can't do that, then you're always going to have this treatment, my friend. This is just how it's going to
Yeah.
be. If you like what you saw, subscribe to my channel and check out my website in the description to book a call. Thanks for watching.